Charles DeRudio, an Italian nobleman and career U.S. Army officer, served with the 7th Cavalry at Little Bighorn. Though promoted to first lieutenant in December 1875, peers like Captain Frederick Benton mockingly dubbed him Count No Account due to his self-important storytelling and aristocratic airs. Disliked by Custer and senior officers, he survived the battle's relentless horror. This is his testimony. DeRudio survived the Battle of Little Bighorn and later wrote a letter describing his experiences during the battle. I narrowly escaped death at Little Bighorn on June 25th and 26th, 1876, and I am here to share my harrowing first-hand account of this monumental clash. At approximately 10 a.m. on June 25th, General Custer's scouts returned with alarming intelligence. They had located an Indian encampment roughly 15 miles distant, situated along the Little Bighorn. The scouts noted that the Indians seemed to be withdrawing before our advancing column. We persisted in our march for an additional 2 or 3 miles before General Custer called a halt to devise our offensive strategy. He delegated companies H, D, and K under Colonel F.W. Benteen to secure our left flank with explicit instructions to eliminate all opposition in their trajectory. Companies M and G, commanded by Colonel Reno, and where I was provisionally assigned, occupied the central position. General Custer personally led companies E, I, F, L, and C along the attack's right wing, while Company B stayed behind to protect the supply train. After progressing several more miles, our central contingent received directives to proceed at a trot, maintaining that pace until reaching the river approximately 6 or 7 miles ahead. Upon arrival at the river, we crossed it and emerged onto the plains beyond, where we were commanded to establish battle formations. With orders issued, we advanced at a gallop, pursuing adversaries through an impenetrable dust cloud stirred by the retreating Indians. The dust proved so dense that vision was nearly impossible, compelling Colonel Reno to halt the battalion. After dismounting, Colonel Reno rapidly organized a skirmish line, anchoring the right flank beside a dry, thickly wooded creek. While horses were escorted to shelter within the timber, the Indians initiated a violent onslaught, which we countered with immediate defensive fire. The skirmish persisted for roughly half an hour. It was then ascertained that across the creek, within a park-like expanse, several lodges stood. Our entire line traversed the creek to discover the lodges deserted, only to encounter approximately 200 howling, shrieking warriors. The overpowering barrage from this superior force rendered retreat virtually unattainable as we became encircled. Entering the engagement with merely 100 men, the enemy's ceaseless gunfire inflicted severe damage upon our diminished contingent. While crossing the creek positioned at the rear, I noticed a guidon abandoned and returned to recover it. Navigating through the woodland, the guidon became ensnared in branches and slipped from my hold. Dismounting to retrieve it, I guided my horse toward the creek's southern bank. Just as I prepared to remount, a bullet struck my horse, causing it to panic and flee into the Indians' ranks, leaving me stranded on foot with some 300 Sioux warriors merely 50 yards distant. They unleashed a whizzing fusillade toward me, yet miraculously I remained untouched. I succeeded in escaping to a neighboring thicket where I could defend myself and bargain for survival. Within the thicket, I encountered Fred Girard, the interpreter, and Private Thomas F. O'Neill from Company G, 7th Cavalry. Girard and O'Neill retained their horses, whereas I, like O'Neill, lacked a mount. I proposed that possessing horses might betray our location and advised driving them off, but they objected. Leaving them, I crawled through the scrubby underbrush into the deep, dry creek bed, intending to remain concealed until nightfall permitted me to slip away and rejoin our forces. After about 10 tense minutes in my refuge, I detected multiple pistol discharges nearby, succeeded by the haunting voices of several squaws. Warily raising my head, I observed these women engaged in the grisly practice of scalping a soldier who might still have been living. 2 concentrated on the cutting, while others executed a war dance around the victim and his disfigurers. The horror of this revolting scene defies description. Eventually, the women departed, likely seeking further victims, affording me an opportunity to reflect on my perilous predicament. While wrestling with my thoughts, I detected a crackling sound nearby. Upon inspection, I recognized it originated from kindling the Indians had ignited. The extremely parched timber caused flames to spread rapidly, compelling me to vacate my sanctuary in the creek. I crawled out of the gully using my prior route. Just as I prepared to ascend the bank, I discerned a voice calling, "Lieutenant!" Lieutenant? Though unable to see anyone, the summons continued. Progressing several yards toward the sound, I discovered the entire group I had recently abandoned, concealed in the creek bottom. Mr. Gerard informed me he had left the horses tethered together where I last saw them and descended after me. Like myself, the party worried about the encroaching flames. Fortunately, the wind diminished and a light rain fell, sufficient to extinguish the fire and restore our hope of staying hidden until darkness. It was now 3 p.m., and we confronted 6 interminable hours of waiting. Throughout this period, we heard and sporadically spotted Indians near us, their voices alarmingly proximate. Words failed to capture the flood of thoughts that occupied my mind during those suspenseful hours. Finally, night descended, the sky heavily overcast, furnishing the concealment we required. We could at last emerge from hiding and proceed toward the ford, positioned 2 miles south across open terrain. Mr. Gerard and the scout rode their horses, while the soldier and I each clutched a horse's tail. Following them through the gloom, Mr. Gerard proposed that if compelled to flee and abandon us, he would notify Colonel Reno of our location to ensure rescue. Crossing the open plain, the night was so ink-black we could scarcely discern anything, but we heard Indians returning to their village. Arriving at timber near what we supposed was the ford crossed earlier that morning, we recognized our error and had to locate the proper crossing. After fording the stream once, we determined it lay at a bend, requiring a second crossing. While recrossing the river, we unexpectedly came upon 8 warriors. The 2 mounted men bolted instantly, while the soldier and I plunged into adjacent brush. I cocked my revolver, kneeling and poised to shoot if the warriors neared. Remarkably, they appeared to believe we had all escaped, and after conferring briefly, continued onward. Relieved, I hailed the soldier, and we reunited. Recognizing that all fords were heavily guarded, attempting a river crossing seemed tantamount to suicide. The night wore on, and at dawn we detected sounds resembling a substantial cavalry unit approaching, notably the distinct noise of horses splashing through water. Cautiously nearing the riverbank, I observed what seemed to be our command. Gray mounts ridden by men in military tunics, some wearing white hats. From my position, I watched as they departed the valley, some troops ascending a steep bluff, while others persisted in crossing the river. This vision filled me with mingled hope and dread, questioning whether we had ultimately found deliverance. I spied a man in a buckskin jacket, trousers, top boots, and a white hat, and I felt certain it was Captain Tom Custer, persuading me these cavalrymen belonged to our command. Convinced, I confidently stepped onto the bank and shouted, "Tom, don't leave us here!" The distance was mere yards, and my call was answered by a blood-curdling war cry and a barrage of 300 or 400 shots. It was then I comprehended my blunder. The warriors wore clothing and rode horses captured from our fallen men. The soldier and I swiftly dove into thickets as bullets clipped branches with every volley. We crawled away to evade the line of fire, disturbing upper twigs of the undergrowth, provoking Indians on the bluff to shoot toward us. We resolved to traverse a clearing of roughly 20 yards to gain another wooded sector. Before advancing, I prudently surveyed the surroundings. The vista was profoundly discouraging. On our immediate right, just 50 yards off, I noticed 4 or 5 Indians rapidly closing in. Adjacent to me stood 2 cottonwood stumps nearly touching. Behind this improvised barrier, the soldier and I knelt. He held his carbine while I gripped my revolver, prepared to fell several warriors before they could reach us. They hadn't detected us, and when the foremost man was only 10 yards distant, I fired. They advanced in single file, and upon my shot they abruptly wheeled about, making a rapid withdrawal. Private O'Neill then discharged his carbine at the second warrior, who was at that instant pulling his pony around. The private's aim proved accurate and his carbine dependable, as the Native American dropped his reins, lifted his hands, and sank onto the grass for his eternal repose. The individual I had initially engaged rode a brief distance, then likewise succumbed. The remainder rode onward, rounded the timber's corner, and disappeared. Throughout this interval, gunfire from the bluffs continued, but after our shots, it halted, and we withdrew to the thicket. From our station, we observed Indians on the bluffs, their horses tethered beneath the hill's shelter, and a row of marksmen lying prone. Combat echoes resounded from the heights above, the sustained rattle of musketry, our comrades' cheers, and the Native Americans' cries. Our spirits soared when we identified the distinctive cheer of our fellows, but disillusion swiftly followed as we realized our woodland sanctuary was afire, compelling us to move. We crawled almost to the woodland's edge when we perceived adversaries had ignited both flanks. We progressed until finding a dense stand of mulberry trees, under which we crept. The grass bordering this zone was exceptionally green, having received light rain shortly before, with no wind. As flames neared our hideout, they advanced very gradually, enabling me to extinguish them with my gauntlet gloves. The surrounding fire burned itself out, leaving us in a diminutive secure zone. Encircled by fire, it shielded us from exterior view. We could observe our surroundings without detection. We witnessed Native Americans moving about, and one sentinel positioned approximately 70 to 80 yards distant, monitoring the blaze. At 4 p.m., he discharged 4 shots skyward, which I interpreted as a signal. Subsequently, we heard a Native American shouting vociferously, reiterating the identical call 4 times. After these signals, we observed over 200 Native Americans departing the vicinity and fording the river. Later, identical signals recurred, and numerous additional Native Americans rode away mounted. Soon, the remainder also exited. We felt optimistic, and the persistent gunfire diminished, with only sporadic distant shots audible. By 6 p.m., our environs appeared tranquil, devoid of Native American presence. We presumed the regiment had evacuated the battleground, and we merely needed to await nightfall to cross the river and proceed toward the Yellowstone River. There, we intended to construct a raft and float downstream to Powder River, where our supply depot stood. We had endured 36 hours without sustenance or water. At 8 p.m., we waded through the river, crossing it twice, and ascended the bluffs, deliberately selecting our path. We advanced slowly and warily, traversing 10 miles before I scaled a lofty hill to survey the terrain for indications of our command. I detected a fire about 2 miles off, toward where we believed our command had fought. We deliberated whether it was a Native American fire or our command's. We resolved to approach circumspectly and investigate. We descended the hill and headed toward the fire, climbing elevations and pausing to listen, advancing over a mile. Gaining a hill crest, we halted and listened again. We overheard voices, but they were too indistinct to identify as Native American or our command's. We edged closer and heard a mule bray, followed by a sentry's recognizable challenge, "Halt! Who goes there?" The challenge wasn't directed at us, since we were too remote and obscured by darkness. But it emboldened us to continue approaching prudently, still apprehensive about encountering Native Americans. We were approximately 200 yards from the fire when I yelled, "Picket, don't fire! It's Lieutenant DeRudio and Private O'Neill," and sprinted toward them. Our announcement was greeted by resounding cheers from the picket and Lieutenant Varnum. Lieutenant Varnum, a valiant and proficient officer, approached me, elated to see me alive, having presumed I was among the fallen. I inquired about the regiment's condition, hoping we were the sole survivors, but that hope proved fleeting. Lieutenant Varnum stated he had no tidings regarding the 5 companies under Custer, and that our command had lost Lieutenants McIntosh and Hodgson. I reached camp around 10 a.m. and couldn't sleep despite exhaustion from 2 sleepless nights. I conversed with Lieutenant Varnum regarding the battle, recounting my near escapes and ordeals. Morning soon arrived, and I conferred with officers to report the Native Americans' departure. At 8 a.m., we observed cavalry approaching, first several scouts, then a substantial column. We swiftly recognized it was General Gibbon's command arriving to relieve us. Later, an extended infantry line materialized on the plain, and General Gibbon appeared. Witnessing those blue uniforms stirred profound emotion. When Generals Gibbon and Terry entered our camp, grown men wept like children. I must acknowledge Private O'Neill's steadfast loyalty and valor. He followed my directives and stood by me like a sibling. I shall forever remember him and his invaluable service throughout our hazardous ordeal together. This courageous soldier is held in high regard by his company commander and will perpetually have my gratitude and that of my comrades. Charles C. DeRudio. History's greatest survival stories are waiting in your subscription feed. Join Root Volutionary, where the past comes alive. Hit subscribe before the next battle begins.